All right, welcome to the Marriage Boss Podcast. Today I'm pumped up for my special guest because he works in an area we've all wrestled with at one time or another, and that's building intimate relationships that last. Thomas G. Fiffer, better known as Tom, is an executive editor at the Good Men Project. That's how he and I met. He's a graduate of Yale University, and he holds an MA in creative writing from the University of Illinois at Chicago. He is a professional writer, speaker, and storyteller with a focus on diagnosing and healing dysfunctional relationships. And boy, do we need that. You can find him at Tom Aplomb, and you'll see the spelling in the show notes, and connect with him on Facebook and Twitter. I'll also include those links in the show notes. And his books, Why It Can't Work, Detaching from Dysfunctional Relationships to Make Room for True Love, which I just finished, and it's incredible. And What is Love? A Guide for the Perplexed to Matters of the Heart, are available on Amazon. And he's also working on his first novel. Please join me in giving a big Marriage Boss welcome to Tom Fiffer. Tom, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Rick. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here with you today.
Well, I'm excited to have you. And for everybody who knows me, they know when I got involved with the Good Men Project, it was like a watershed moment in my life and career, certainly in writing about men's issues and marriage and relationships. So I want to thank you again for mentoring me and taking me on, and it's been a great ride.
Oh, my pleasure. You're an excellent writer, and you have a lot to contribute.
Thanks a lot
to the Good Men Project.
I appreciate that. So today we're going to talk about one of the Marriage Boss's favorite topics, and that's building intimate relationships that last. Something I've always been interested in. I know a lot of my friends and clients, certainly my audience, is interested in it. But before we jump in, is there a book that you've read recently or that's in your library that you want to share with the audience?
Sure. That book is Stop Walking on Eggshells. It's by Randy Krieger. It is the Bible for understanding dysfunctional relationships. It awakened me to what was happening in my own life. It gave a name to some things that I was experiencing, but beyond that, it identified relationship patterns that I think plague so many marriages and other types of and other relationships that people have. And so, as I read that book, I said, yes. This is what's happening to me. This is what's happening to me. This is what I'm experiencing. And this is how I'm contributing to it as well. Yeah. Because when we're unhappy, the first thing we do is we point the finger at the other person. We say, it's all my partner's fault. If only she would change. If only she would do this. So, but this book really gets at the dynamic that happens in relationships where people are miserable.
It's funny, as I think about this and I'm listening to the book, there's so little done when we're younger to tell us that this is something that could happen to us too. I think all young people think, well, I'm watching this, it's not going to happen to me. And then there's so little help that's obvious to either come forward. It's still a secret. It's a dark conversation.
Absolutely, so people don't realize that they're becoming enmeshed in these patterns. You know you're unhappy. You have a nagging feeling that this isn't the way your relationship is supposed to be. You get upset with yourself when you react in certain ways. You have the same arguments and conversations over and over again, and nothing gets resolved.
Yep.
And one of the things that was another light bulb for me. This was my son was in, second grade or first grade or something. He came home and he had a drawing and he said, here's what I learned in school today, Dad. A pattern is something that repeats itself.
Wow.
And it's so simple, but that's what happens. Something dysfunctional happens in the relationship the first time. And if you don't address it and if you're not aware of it, the pattern repeats itself over and over and over again.
And what were you thinking at that moment? Did a light bulb go off in your head?
Yes.
Oh man.
It did.
Wow.
It absolutely did.
Well, young kids, they say out of the mouth of babes, right?
Right.
I mean, it's so simple. I'm trying in my own life to get back to a simpler life because, Lord knows now with all of the technology and everything we're doing, we can complicate it. And this complicates our relationships, certainly.
Yes.
Wow. All right, so good book suggestion. So I'll put that in the show notes. That's terrific. So let's jump right into the talk. Building intimate relationships that last. So what are the keys to building a lasting, intimate relationship, Tom?
Well, there are a few of them. And the first one is respect. Without respect, you don't have a relationship. You have people doing things together. You can go places. You can be married. You can have kids. You can have sex. You can do all sorts of things. But without respect, you do not have a real relationship because you're not treating that person as an equal, and you're not engaging with that person in a way that is healthy, that preserves his or her self-esteem and your own. Following that, you have trust. You have to have a level of trust between the two people, not only having each other's backs, but trusting each other not to hurt each other, not to engage in intentional cruelty and other things that really undermine intimacy and every aspect of a relationship. And the third one I would say is communication. Some people put that first. It's hard to say what is most important, although I do think really respect is the most important thing, because respect sets the tone for the whole relationship. Respectful communication, respectful interaction, respectful, everything that you're doing with one another. So respect, trust, communication, presence. You have to be present. You have to choose to be present all the time. In fact, I just put a video up on the Good Men Project the other day with John Gottman, who's the marriage guru.
Oh yeah, he's good.
Yep. He's great, and he talks about how he can tell, in 10 or 15 seconds by watching couples interact whether they will stay together or not. And he says the number one predictor of divorce is contempt. But in this video he talks about trust. And he says trust is built in sliding door moments. Trust is built when there's a bid for attention or a need for something from your partner, and you either attend to it and give it, or you make a more selfish choice and you don't. And if that becomes a pattern, if your inattention and missing those moments becomes a pattern, then the trust erodes, and then you have basically a dysfunctional relationship.
Two things on the respect issue. I was listening to a book by Gail Larson, who is a transformational speaking coach and a legend in that business, and has taught some of the best in our business to go and find their true voice. And she says that, akin to what you said on respect, she said when someone makes you feel valuable, that's how you know you have a relationship. If you feel valued by that person. And she actually said, just like you did, you can have a relationship, you can be married, you can have kids, you can live together, you can do all these things. But if you're not valuable, if you don't have that respect, I think that's a key. I think it is a pillar, and I would list that number one. That's a terrific place to start, and just powerful.
And the thing is, if you're not getting that value, our value comes from within. It's not that we have to seek it externally, but if we're not feeling valued by that other person, we're going to seek that feeling of being valued somewhere else.
Yeah.
Whether it's at work and never coming home, whether it's infidelity, whatever it is, because we sort of need that. And one of the articles that I wrote for the Good Men Project that's featured in the Dysfunctional Relationship book is called 5 Words That Will Change Your Life. And those 5 words are only stay where you are valued.
Yeah, that's good. I in listening to the Gottman reference, I remember hearing that, and I got freaked out for a second because I thought I was going to be put in front of him with my wife for 15 seconds, and he was going to judge me. I immediately felt like that, and I was hoping silently that I would pass the test. Even though I'm married almost 29 years, I don't want to,
right.
Or 27, whatever it is. But good stuff. So how can you tell if your relationship is dysfunctional?
Another of the articles in the book is called "The 7 Deadly Signs of a Dysfunctional Relationship," and I don't need to list them all, but one of them, the first one, and we were talking about this endless argument. One of them is tedium. Nothing ever gets resolved. You have the same conflicts over and over and over again, and one of the things when I started in therapy and I started complaining about all these conflicts, and my therapist said something to me that I found at first really weird. He said, "Pay no attention to the content."
Yeah.
I said, but it's about this, this really important issue, and I'm right, and she's wrong. He said, "Pay no attention to the content. Pay attention to the pattern. Pay attention to the way that you are relating to that other person." So whether it's about, your mother coming over for dinner, or you stayed late at work, or whatever it is, these things get picked on over and over and over again, and it's then the conflict becomes the predominant pattern of relating, and that's what a lot of people don't realize is dysfunctional, is that relationships are not supposed to be about constant conflict, and unresolved issues. Relationships are supposed to be about relating, about enjoying one another, about doing things that you like to do together.
Yeah, and it's funny. I think that when we get in a relationship where these patterns occur, sometimes we blame ourselves.
Right.
That's not a healthy way to look at it. Sometimes we blame the other person. That's equally as unhealthy. And then sometimes we blame our parents, or circumstances, or the environment. We really never look at, like you said, just the patterns and see how maybe I like to go at it. It takes two to tango. So certainly you have to take some responsibility, but it's so hard to see things clearly when you're in this type of relationship, because it's just a snowballing of all the things that go on and happen. Being an adult in 2015 is challenging.
It is, and all of your emotional energy goes into, these dysfunctional patterns of, the endless argument and the uncertainty of never knowing what to expect. Who's your partner going to be today? What are you going to come home to? I think that it's also hard to recognize it because you're often blamed for it. But going to what you said about the dynamic, I believe that in these relationships, one partner generally sets the tone for the relationship. One partner who brings a certain amount of personal dysfunction, history, whatever it is, not blaming that person, just saying it exists, to the relationship. And that person I call the controlling partner. Mm-hmm. And then the other person is the contributing partner, because the other person is contributing to it by participating in it, by enabling it, and by developing coping mechanisms that fuel it.
And is there something to look out for that, can we tell are we always a controlling partner when we get in relationships, or do we change roles depending on who we're with?
I think we probably tend to be one or the other. I mean, if we're going to go one way or the other, I think that people who grew up as people pleasers and trying to make people happy, and your validation depended on someone else's mood or whatever it is, we're more likely to be contributing partners.
Yep.
People who suffered other types of damage or abuse or other things when they were growing up can often be the controlling partners, because they sort of have an agenda for the relationship, and they're also coming from a place of pain, and they're trying to alleviate that pain.
I'm wondering if the type A personality has anything to do with this. The person who's maybe more aggressive, or driving constantly. I'm thinking about in my own relationship. I would be the one who's constantly driving, high energy, non-stop. You can't turn me off. And my wife is much more passive and relaxed and quiet maybe just as simple as the extrovert and the introvert got together.
Right.
And so, one of her biggest challenges over the years has been for me to listen more, for me to stop talking, for me to, and even though it's sometimes with excitement and enthusiasm, even if, after 5 minutes of me telling her why I'm so excited or happy about something, she'll try to contribute and make a statement about it, and I'm thinking about what I'm going to say next, and God bless her.
That happens, but intimacy, since we're kind of circling back, intimacy is really about connection.
Yeah.
And so realizing that the most important thing in your head, the thought that you just had, or the realization, or the program that you're working on, or whatever, may not be the most important thing in the other person's head.
Oh, without a doubt. Yeah.
And so if we want intimacy, and we want that intimacy to last, we have to meet our partners where they are.
It feels like almost like a patience level with being able to do all of the things you mentioned today, to respect, to trust, to communicate. Takes patience. It almost takes some grounding, and to have both feet firmly on the ground, which is rare for me. Both of my feet, I'm flying 100% of the time. Right. So I can relate to, it sounds like the more patience I get, the more able I am to be, the things you're mentioning. So it feels like that. It feels like intensity and anxiety, or, the desire to be heard and share your excitement, isn't always conducive to, the best fertile ground to plant relationship seeds in.
I think that's absolutely right. Patience is essential, and patience, it's not just a behavior, it's a practice. Yeah. Patience is something you have to practice and get good at every single day. But that doesn't mean being patient with stuff that hurts you. That doesn't mean being patient with stuff that doesn't serve you. Because a lot of us grow up also being sort of trained to be patient, to wait our turn, to let someone else go ahead, or whatever it is, and so we can then become contributing partners in situations where someone is just kind of running roughshod all over us.
I had a sales manager one time who used to say, "I want you to be aggressive, but I don't want you to be abrasive."
Right.
And it was kind of like, assertiveness training. Go ask the question. Go out there and do your thing. You don't have to be rude, but I've been, balancing these ideas in my head for 52 years. But that's a good one. So, can dysfunctional relationships be righted and healed?
I think they can. I think that in most cases, unless there's some kind of pathology involved with one or the other person, where the behaviors are just, for whatever reasons, unchangeable, I think you would say, where there's a will, there's a way, and where there's education, there's a way. If people recognize the patterns, and then they take hold of the tools to change those patterns, to step in and make conscious decisions about what they're doing, then I think it is possible to right the relationship. What you will find is that the controlling partner, when confronted with a different way of acting, when the contributing partner stops contributing and actually takes a leadership role in the relationship and says, "No, we're not going to act this way anymore," the controlling partner may find that extremely uncomfortable because control is being wrestled away in a way. But with a strong enough model for the behavior, and if people truly want to change, if you want the relationship to last, if you want to get close to your partner, it's possible to make those changes, but it's hard, and both people have to want to do it, and both people really have to work very hard at it, because it means doing things that don't come naturally. It means not giving in to your first instinct or impulse and saying, "Wait a minute, that's not in the relationship's best interest, and I need to do it differently."
I'm thinking about how often when we enter new relationships, we use the patience we were just referring to wait it out sometimes. When we first start to see these issues and these dysfunctional patterns appear,
Right.
we think, well, if I do this, or, well, we're only married a year, or he's having trouble at work, or, she's having a baby.
Right.
We tend to hope against hope that these things are going to change someday, or something's going to shift. And how do you know when it's time to walk away?
Well, that is an excellent question, and I guess it's different for everybody. But I think the key involves kind of not to reduce it to mathematics, because that's kind of a cold way to look at it. But try to look at your relationship and say, what's at the core of it? Because if the core of your relationship is the two of you ripping each other apart all the time, and if you've tried to change it, if you've worked on your own stuff, if you've looked at your own contribution, and you start doing things differently, and your partner is still doing the same old stuff, mm-hmm. and criticizing you for your effort to make things better,
horrible,
then I think you have to walk away, because you have a non-cooperative person. You don't have the level of respect and trust and communication and intimacy that you desire for a healthy relationship. But if you're seeing real change, if you're seeing real effort, and it's genuine, and things are getting better, and instead of you being miserable 80% of the time, if that's shifted to 20% of the time, and you're working on that 20%, then I think it's probably worth staying. What my therapist told me when I began to work with him, he said, "Tom, you're going to get healthy. You're going to become an emotionally healthy person." So first he was, letting me know that I wasn't, and that was my role in the relationship. And he said, so that's what we're going to work on. And he said, then you're going to be setting the tone for your relationship, and your partner will either follow that tone, will either, go along with that, sort of operating in your healthy orbit, or she won't.
Yeah.
And you'll know whether it works or not. And so he was also telling me, be prepared, your work is either going to save your relationship or it's going to end it.
Yeah. So like we always say in our business, it's about working on you. Change yourself, not someone else.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, this has been amazing. These insights and this information. I know I could have used it, 30 years ago for sure. And so many people I'm thinking about, are going to jump on your book. All I can tell you, people, is, go out and grab a copy of Why It Can't Work. It's a terrific book, certainly for anyone who's in a relationship now. Just good stuff. Thanks so much, Tom, for sharing your insights. And I want to just tell our audience that you have been kind enough to offer, this is awesome, a discounted 30-minute relationship health assessment to everyone in the Marriage Boss audience. And this is regularly $100 value, but our audience can have it for $39. So I would jump on that if you feel like you need to plug in, find out what's going on. If you have some issues in your relationship right now, Tom is an expert in this area. Take advantage of this. I'm assuming get in touch with you somewhere, Tom, and mention the Marriage Boss to make that happen.
Mm-hmm.
All right,
yep.
and I'll put all this in the show notes at themarriageboss.com/podcast. Tom can be found at www.tomaplomb.blogspot.com, and I'll give you the spelling. It's TOMAPLOMB.blogspot.com, and that'll be in the show notes. And also you can find him at the goodmenproject.com. And that'll be in the show notes. Tom, thank you so much for joining me today. This was incredible, my man. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Rick. It's always fascinating to talk about these issues, and I always learn something when I do. So I appreciate the opportunity. Thanks.
Good stuff. Talk to you soon.
Okay.